Hermione. Hours have passed, and he is still sleeping. It's the middle of the night. Ted has gone. He had a night shift and couldn't stay. He told me to call him if there are changes, and he left me another blood replenishing potion to make him drink when he wakes up. I didn't leave his side for a second, not even to get a shower. I don't want him to wake up and find himself alone. All the blood on my arms, it's cackled. I've got some on my face too. I can feel it. My clothes are a mess. It looks like a murder gym. I've never seen so much blood in my whole life. All what I felt when, in Azkaban, the guard revealed what Rona tried to do after Lily's death, reawakened in even greater form. And yet, there wasn't anything gruesome there to be seen. But here, I'm sure I will have nightmares for a very long time. The vision was ghastly. I screamed when I got inside. The water was completely red, the bloody knife on the floor, and him so pallid I thought I was late. I've never done the trip Romania-England so fast, half an hour. I showed my minister badge at every border fireplace to speed up the whole procedure. I've never done it before. I always thought despicable, people abusing of it for no real reason, but this time I had no scruples. Ted got there basically at the same time as me, and I thank God for that. Calling some mango was to avoid at all costs. In the space of 10 minutes the whole magical community would have found out. I was frantic, trembling all over, and I could barely keep my wand steady. Ted slipped immediately in his healer role, casting so many complicated spells I didn't recognize half of them. That told me at least he wasn't dead, otherwise he wouldn't have bothered. But I was nevertheless maddening with worry. I should never have left him alone. Never. The signs were all there, and I didn't even notice all taken by my problems. I was so stupid. When Harry finally blinked, I was so relieved I started to sob hysterically. If he should have died, I would have never been able to forgive myself. Ted made him drink the potion straight away, and when Harry closed his eyes, asleep, we looked at each other for a long moment. I was in a flood of tears, and he was still so agitated. After a short while, he slumped on the side of the bathtub, while I was trying to pull myself together, sadly observing the knife, and warily rubbed his face, staining his white hair of pink due to the bloody water in his hand. I crawled on his side and hugged my knees. "What do we do now?" I asked. "If you mean the practical, we need to take him out from the cold water and put him to bed. When he will wake up, he will need to drink another blood replenishing potion." I nodded, sure something else was going to be added. "If you mean in the long run." And then he halted, and something happened I did not foresee. He wept. He started to cry silently, his shoulders quivering, covering his eyes, distraught. It really struck me. I didn't see him often crying, not even when he was a child. He wasn't a whining baby, and I can count on the tip of my fingers the times in which I had to dry his tears up. With Hugo was happening often enough, like with any other child. He would cry because one of his friends stole him a toy, or because he fell, or because I scolded him, or because of a tantrum. But it wasn't the same with Ted. That outburst left me speechless with dejection. I circled him with an arm, and I kept him close to me until his crying did subside. "I'm sorry," he said in the end, mopping up his eyes, making a proper mess of his face of blood mingled with tears. I looked barely better. "It's okay," I answered, finding myself at loss for words. I don't know how we can help him. I don't know how we can prevent him trying this again. He'll try again for sure, he muttered, glancing at the knife still on the floor. I fear it's a bit too much to expect him to get over a trauma of that kind. His life is utterly ruined. He cannot go back to work. He cannot even get out from his place without changing his face. How can he possibly get over everything in this condition? He said wearily, and while taken by this gloomy consideration, his hair turned slowly from white to grey, and in the end to a deep black. It reminds me very much, he started saying, but then halted speaking, as if struck by a sudden idea. I looked at him inquiringly. What does it remind you? He turned looking at me, wide eyes, lost in his reasoning, while, always very slowly, his hair turned back of its pure white striated by blood. Perhaps, he mumbled, looking wistful. Perhaps, he repeated, his gaze fixed now on the floor. Before I could ask for an explanation, he bolted up. Right, Hermione, let's take him out from this cold water immediately. When Harry was safe in bed, Ted left, ordering me not to leave him alone. We will take turns to watch over him until I'm gone. I told him I don't know for how long I'll be able to stay, and he frowned. I know. We will find a solution. Don't worry. I talked to him. It's hours already. I'm looking at him sleeping. His chest goes up and down regularly, and he seems peaceful. I'm afraid of the waking up moment. The reality of being still here with all his torments will hit him like a train. It's 2 o'clock already. As my eyelids start to feel extremely heavy, I see him moving slightly. A few seconds later, by the pallid light coming from the outside, I perceive him squinting. He turns his head, and seeing me, he does something I wasn't expecting. He smiles. My eyes threaten to get watery, but I push it back quickly. This is not the moment to get emotional. I need to get a grip over myself. Hey, he says in a whisper, reaching out for my face, brushing it lovingly, which only makes more difficult for me not to cry. But I keep everything in control courageously. I open the bottle I've got on my side, and I raise his head to help him drink it. When he's done, he drops on the pillow, closing his eyes. Lie down here close to me, he says, hoarse voice. I can't. I'm all a mess. I gibber, trying not to choke over my words. His gaze glides over me. He chuckles softly and moves the duvet from his side to make me place. I snuggle up by him, who keeps me close, gently brushing my arm. How are you? I mutter, my head on his chest, inhaling the smell of him combined with the smell of his blood dried on my skin. I'm okay. A bit weak, but I'll be better soon. He mumbles back. We lie there for a while without speaking, listening to the noise of the London night. A seldom siren, cars hum, and some cats or fox having a fight. I know he's not sleeping, because his fingers found mine and now are solidly interlinked. I reflect on how close I've been to say farewell to all of this. 10 minutes later, and I would have been crying over his body. All the warmth gone from him, everything that makes him what he is, erased and nullified. This thought scares me enormously. And the relief of being able to savor these small things, as his smell, an embrace, of hearing his voice, shattering me the composure I was mastering with such difficulty, provoking a cascade of stifled sobs. He shushes me softly, caressing my head, but nevertheless the words leave my mouth with rancor. "How could you do it?" I gabble angrily between tears. "How could you?" He doesn't answer me straight away. "I'm sorry. It was stupid of me." "Yes, it was stupid," I blurt out, sitting up, resentful. "After everything you told me about Ron being a selfish bastard for what he tried to do, you did exactly the same thing. Didn't you think about your kids, about Ted, about me?" I say, jumbling up words as I speak. He stares at me for a long time. "I guess I wasn't thinking. But I know I've been wrong, Ginny." But then he dies off, and I wonder what he was about to say. But I prefer not to inquire, not to touch delicate topics that is best to left untouched right now. He exerts himself on his elbows quite warily. I can see how this little movement is an exertion on his weak body, and I try to make him lie down. But he resists, locking my eyes with his. "I promise you, I won't do it again." He leans toward me to give me a kiss, but I push him away resentfully. I really feel a grudge right now. I cannot believe he has been so egoist. He didn't spare a thought about what everybody was going to feel, what I was going to feel if he would have died. How can you expect me to forgive him? He doesn't allow to be shoved away. A sliding hand behind my head, he thrusts me close to his face and presses his lips on my forehead. "I promise you, I won't do it again," he repeats, his lips brushing lightly my skin, and he touches with his mouth both my wet cheekbones, adding, "And I'm really sorry." As his face drew back, his hand slid down on my neck, with his thumb sweeping away tenderly the last tears that hung on my face. Then, brushing softly my slightly parted lips, and enslaving me completely through his penetrant gaze, he says, "You are my guardian angel. I owe you my life once again. Thank you." Well, what could I do if not forgive him instantly? I wake up late. Some pallid rays of sun make way through the window. I squint against the light of the morning, and I look about me. Harry is not there, but my dirty clothes left on the chair are now clean and neatly folded. Tonight, after he thanked me, he slumped back on the pillow exhausted, and fell asleep not long after that. My flush was so intense the room seemed illuminated, and that together with the fact that my heartbeat was so fast it was audible, I decided to get a shower to calm myself. In my rush to leave Romania, I didn't get anything with me, so I wore one of his sweatpants and a t-shirt, and I got to bed to his side. I rested my hand on his chest, and accompanied by the gentle movement of it, I managed to slumber peacefully. And it has been so deep, I didn't hear him leaving the room. I rise on my elbow, rubbing my eyes. Some hushed voices come from the kitchen. I amble over there sleepily, wondering what time is it and how long I slept. Getting close, Ted's hushed voice catch my ear. "I think it's the only way," he is stating. I don't know," Harry replies leerily. "What about the boys?" "They could." But he takes off seeing me. Harry, following his gaze, perceives me too, and smiles affectionately. "Good morning," he greets me. "I just made coffee. Do you want a cup?" The smell of it invades my nostrils, and my heart swelled with sheer joy seeing him seemingly so serene, smiling, and overall alive. I succeed in a nod, at which he jumps up from the chair, preparing a cup for me. Ted is leaning against the kitchen counter, with his healer uniform still on. Surely he popped here at the end of his shift to check on him. He has got a pensive, steadfast expression, and follows Harry's movements around the room. I sit around the table while Harry leaves a cup of fuming coffee and some toast in front of me. As he does, I spot his forearm. There are 3 identical long vertical lines instead of the single one that used to be there. I frown. Usually, the healing charm prevents the forming of scars. He glimpses me staring at it, and smiling uneasy, he tucks down his sleeve. I gotta go now. Think about what I told you. We will discuss it another time, Ted says to Harry, leaving the counter with a fleeting glance at me. Okay, Ted. Thanks for everything. I stare from one to the other inquiringly, but none explain. Do you need another potion before I go? He asks, looking at him studiously. Nope, I feel quite alright, he answers, sitting down. Can I count on your promise? Ted asks again searchingly. Yes, you can. I'll be on my best behavior from now on. He half smiles, drinking his coffee. Say hello to Victoire. But then, in the silence that follows, his smile vanishes and he sombers up. He runs a hand in his hair uneasy, and staring in his cup, he mutters, Would you mind keeping what happened quiet? I don't want the boys to find out. We both murmur an agreement, at which he adds, Thank you. I'm really grateful for what you have done. I won't give you any more troubles. As soon as that is gone, I ask him what they were talking about, but he shrugs, smiling. About the future, he answers evasively. I try to get more details about what this future might be, but he doesn't seem inclined to give any. He gave me some advice on what to do. He mumbles vague, and then adds, I need to ask you a favor, Hermione. I know you have already done much for me, but I need to ask you this last thing. Harry, don't be silly. You can ask me anything, I say, nibbling my toast. I need you to go to the ministry for me. I won't take back my position. He stands up and takes a sealed letter from a drawer, handing to me. You should give this to the minister. There are some instructions about what is left undone and where to find each file in my office. He chuckles. It's funny. I still cannot recollect how old would be Lillian by now, but I recollect exactly where every file is. I don't find it funny at all. Quite sad, actually. Heartbroken is the word I'm groping for. A shadow passes in his eye. 9, I think, he murmurs. But soon after, he shakes his head lightly as to ward it off and takes back a serene demeanor. Anyway, there are instructions on how to deal with my maze. God only knows how much junk has accumulated. Everything must be burned. I don't want to see any of it. If there is something really important, can be forwarded to Ted. He agreed on it. He held speaking a moment, and then he sighs. I would have liked to go myself to say farewell to the guys in the department, but I don't think I can affront it. You would do it for me, would you? He asked Miss Eager. Will you tell them that I really love to work on their side and that I'll miss it? I nod, unable to speak. Despite all I always thought about his job, how unsuitable it was for his mind, and despite I wholeheartedly back up his decision, I cannot help feeling a knot in my throat. He loved his job, and is forced to leave it after all the efforts invested in securing it. The strain on his mind would be too much, his memory is too liable, and overall people would make his life a living hell with their nosiness. It's clear he cannot return there. But what is he going to do now? That is right. He cannot even get out without being harassed. He will have to stay here, shut in the house, alone, with his dark thoughts. Although he promised faithfully not to act stupidly again, how can we be sure of it? Now he's fine, but what about in a week or a month of this solitude and inactivity? Won't everything be back to what it has been? On mulling this over, I'm off for the ministry. Browning welcomes me quite cordially, and I can detect the hope in this affected cordiality to hear about Harry's return. I always quite liked Browning, or better, I like his policy about the magical community development and behavior toward magical creatures. But I've always despised the way in which he used Harry's name mercilessly to achieve anything. He has always been extra friendly, only to get profit of the love the magical community nurtured for him. He's not concerned about Harry's well-being, he just wants to see him back as soon as it might be. I give him the letter, sipping the tea he offered me, and I see his disappointed expression as his eyes move back and forth while reading. When done, the letter drops on his fancy polished desk, accompanied by a cig. "He's not coming back," he mutters, looking now at me, as hoping I could give him a different answer. I shake my head. "This is a great loss for the ministry. A great loss." He repeats, standing up and going toward the window which overlooks the Manhattan skyline. And I'm hatefully sure he doesn't mean that because of his skills as an actor or his personality. "And I gather it would be fruitless to ask you to make him change his mind?" he continues hopefully. "He doesn't give much explanation in his letter about the reasons behind this decision." I arch an eyebrow, incredulous. "With all respect, Minister, but a deranged Death Eater killed his wife. Do we need a better explanation?" He stares at me in surprise and then blinks stupidly. "It's just unbelievable how people are prone to forget Harry has got feelings as any other human being. What's wrong with them? What did you think that after a catastrophic event of this magnitude he would be back happy and cheerful like nothing ever happened? And anyway, I wouldn't dream of trying to change his mind," I add, with a bit of a grudge. "Probably you are right," he piped out after some consideration, lowering his gaze. "But perhaps in a different position. Maybe head of the sport department. Thompson will retire very soon, I believe." "I don't think it would be wise for him to be back working here right now. It wouldn't help his peace of mind. What happened is still too much talked of. It would only irritate him." "How is he?" This should have been the first question, actually, but I decided to overlook the fact and I answered something vague. "I don't trust him. He could use any information to the ministry's advantage, and I don't want to." He listened carefully, and when I'm done, he sits down on his leathery armchair, getting some folders from a drawer and pushing them toward me. I take them, and while I'm perusing the content, understanding at first glance what they're about, Browning explains obliquely. "You were right, by the way. I fired 3 employees of the cleaning staff. There were smuggling hairs procured in his office. They made thousands of gallons selling them in Nocturnal Alley. We are keeping the information secret, as we deem dangerous its breeding, but this is how 854 managed to get hold of it. The shop has been closed likewise, and they are all under arrest. If Harry wants to, he can press charges for a pecuniary compensation. I doubt he will. I'm not even sure I'll tell him. The only idea of having money as a compensation for Ginny's death would disrupt him to such an extent, it's not worth the mention. Azkaban will be a strong enough punishment for those idiots, and if they are any clever, they will much prefer to stay in there, considering what might happen if the misdemeanor should come to light. Instead, I bring forward the more practical topics I want to discuss with him. And despite Harry didn't ask me to do anything of the kind, I leave his office with a paper signed which entitles him of a very generous pension in exchange of his services for the magical community. This pension will revert on his kids after his death. I'm satisfied. The only condition that Browning imposed is to keep secret Harry's refusal to take back the position. He wants to let the matter suspended for as long as he can. I think it can be done. Harry won't mind, I'm sure. Maybe it's even for the best. A gossip less on the Daily Prophet. In his department, the reception has been totally different. As soon as his colleagues and Elizabeth saw me, they all lunged forward, assaulting me with questions, all with a look of honest concern difficult to fake. They are sincerely fond of him. I push my way inside and I close the door behind me. Only when this is done, I feel like I can answer to their questions. Carola, a straightforward girl I've always really liked, takes my hand and stares hard at me. Well? She just asks, eyes full of expectancy. He won't be back, but it must remain a secret as long as possible. Browning order. They exchange a low mumble, looking at each other crestfallen. How is he? She then asks eager. I decide to be a bit less vague here. They deserve to know at least part of the truth. Not very good. The situation is delicate, and he is not coping well, but we are doing our best to help him. Elizabeth's eyes fill with tears. Poor dear, whines under his breath. Poor dear. I give them Harry's message, and they stood still, in a grim silence. The woman's eyes are all tearing up, and some of the men too. Their sniffs, the only audible sound. They want me to bring him back a card, and I accept. In a bustle, they lean over one of the desks. Papers flying, and eager mumbles rise from it. While they are busy with it, I enter his office. Everything has been left untouched. The papers on which he was working on are still on the table together with his quill. The ink bottle has been left open in the haste of leaving, and the liquid inside are dried. I start to gather his few possessions. The sight of his backpack in a corner ready for the holiday that was expecting him fills me with an acute sadness. My gaze lingers on the family picture on the desk, one with the children still young and the freckly Lily waving, and another, taken only a few months before, where two teenage boys had taken place of the two children, and the curly sunrise is grimacing joyously on James' lap. They are all smiling. A family destroyed. The gloom takes possession of me, and everything seems bleak. This office, despite messy, has always had a cheerful atmosphere. But not any longer. And after a moment I realize why. Instead of the usual sun, it's pouring down. The weather is dismal, grey, and dark. Nobody is inside on the Millennium Bridge, nor in front of the Tate. And the Thames is scurrying fast and brown for all the mud moved by the incessant pouring. I rest my palm on the glass, looking outside, just as the lightning brightened the room. A loud thunder succeeds. It looks as if it has been raining for a very long time, judging by the Thames. I look about me at the empty room, and I find myself thinking that it feels like, as the sun will never shine again in here.